Welcome back, everybody. It's another Friday night. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. For the rest of the people in the world that have nothing to do on their Friday nights, and they come and drink with me and talk about paranormal stuff and skeptical opinions. Tonight's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to tonight. Before I get to the special part, I'm going to go over the rules as I always do. Rule number one is that what is rule number one? Oh, this is about paranormal questions. If you guys have paranormal questions related to ghosts or UFOs or cryptids or religious mysteries or anything like that, feel free to put them in the chat room, and I will do my best to give you my skeptical opinion, which is my opinion, not everyone else's, but just mine. Rule number two is I don't know everything, and neither does my guest. He knows a lot, but we don't know everything, so don't try to stump us. We might have to look stuff up during the show, which is great. We don't mind doing that. We will definitely look it up. I have additional screens on either side of you, so I can look things up. And then rule number three, this is for friendly conversation, to get discussions going between like skeptics and believers and this side and that side, and just get everybody together to have fun. So, and the unwritten rule number four, which might not apply tonight, but if either me or my guest start slurring our words because we drank too much, please let us know so we can end the show. Close the bar. But otherwise, I'm going to introduce my guest tonight. He is science writer Brian Dunning. He is the host and producer of Skeptoid Podcast, which is an awesome podcast. He is the author of 7 books on scientific skepticism. Skeptoid is one of the longest running and consistently most popular independent podcasts, having surpassed 100 million downloads since January 2017. Holy shit, that's a lot. And I know he has over 740 episodes. Like, that's a lot. If there's a fringe topic out there, he's pretty much covered it. He is the writer and presenter of the documentary films Here Be Dragons and also Principles of Curiosity, and the upcoming Science Friction, which is, we're definitely going to talk about that. Let's see what else. He also has done numerous radio shows and television documentaries. Also hosts the science video series In Fact with Brian Dunning, which I've watched. I love. He's a computer scientist by trade, and he uses media to showcase the rewards of science and critical thinking. He is also a member of the National Association of Science Writers and a pretty cool guy to hang out with. So I'm going to stop talking and bring on my guest, Brian Dunning.
Hey, hello. Woo! Thanks for having me on. Hello, everyone. It's so much fun to be here.
It's funny because I went on your Skeptoid site and went on to like the newsroom part, the press room. And I love how you have the long bio, the short bio, and the really short bio.
Hey, people are always asking for something in various lengths, you know? So, hey, I need a bio. It's got to be 200 to 400 words for the space that we have for this conference or whatever. So you just got to have them all right there.
Right.
All the pictures, and you can just point them to that.
Right. I know. I love the pictures. The pictures are great, especially with the car behind you. You got that like almost like vampire kind of look.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is in a parking garage, and that was for Simon & Schuster wanted some author photos for the conspiracy theory book, Conspiracies Declassified. So there you go. So the photographer said, "Hey, I got a good idea. Let's go to a parking garage." So it's kind of like Deep Throat.
That's nice.
And he wanted some lights in the background, so that was my car at the time in the background with the lights on.
That's cool. I love that. That's badass. It looks like it reminds me of Blade. That's what it does. Blade.
Very much. Oh, totally. I killed a bunch of people really dramatically and cinematically as soon as we were finished taking that shot.
Oh man. All right. So I guess for those that don't know who you are, which if they pay attention to this show, I mean, I've mentioned it a bunch of times. So, but people that don't know, what's your background? Who is Brian Dunning?
So, I mean, I'm the thing I'm known for is the Skeptoid Podcast, which you mentioned in your very generous introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's I've been doing it since 2006. It's something that when I first started, you could do a podcast just kind of as a hobby, and because there was only 6 podcasts, you would have 2,000 listeners in your first few days. Nice. And I was on iTunes for the first 3 months, and I was up to 14,000 each week. And then they put me on the front page because this could happen in 2006. And I went overnight from 14 to 40,000, and it's just kind of grown from there from all those years.
Wow.
And the sad thing now is you start a podcast today, and you're lucky to have 50 listeners a week after a year.
Yeah.
Because the amount of competition out there is just, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a million podcasts. Yeah.
It's very, very hard to find a niche or anything that brings in people, and I mean, luckily for me, I don't care. I don't sell advertising. I don't do anything. I just do this more for fun because I enjoy hanging out, and especially with the with the pandemic thing going on and everyone being quarantined at different times, everyone kind of went to live streaming. And so, I mean, that's what we're doing. And I mean, we get to drink with everybody. And speaking of drinking, what are you drinking tonight?
Well, right now I was just throwing down dinner, but before we jumped on, and so I didn't quite finish my beer, which I had with my Friday dinner. But I've got a selection here, for which I was going to be sampling throughout the evening. I know you're a fairly rum-centric kind of guy, so Haitian rum is a type of rum that I had not tried before. I've been through most of the Caribbean, the TNT rums, and Haitian is one that I had not tried.
Okay.
So this is one of the ones. It's how all the different islands, their rums have their different characteristics, right? So you can make a Mai Tai with the 3 different kinds of rum. This one, the Haitian rums are very much the darker. You can really taste the molasses.
I like that. Yeah.
And it's something that you can really sip and take a long time sipping a single shot. So it's a very nice sipping drink.
Very cool. Very cool. I got tonight. I'm doing the bamboo rum, which was a gift. Bamboo.
So, where is this from?
This is. Let's see. This is. I have no idea. I have no idea. This was a gift from my there's a ghost hunting team that I love dearly, and they call themselves the Peaches, and they were really good friends. We have a great time together, and about a week ago I was in Gettysburg, or a little bit more, and they brought this for me as a gift, and as you can see, it's almost gone.
Good friends.
Good friends. Very good friends.
Well, my second bottle tonight is the famous Shackleton whiskey. Make sure I'm holding this the right direction.
There you go.
So, as you may know, Ernest Shackleton, he had his very famous Antarctic expedition where their ship was crushed in the ice, and they had this incredible ordeal for several years, and no one died. And Shackleton, actually, although he's known for that expedition, he had several expeditions to the Antarctic. And in one of them, they had a little research hut that was built. And just a few years ago, I think it was about 20 years ago or so, this hut was rediscovered. And they found, I believe, hidden under the floor, a case of his scotch from, basically the World War I years.
Right.
And this was scotch that he had particularly, specifically made for that expedition.
Wow.
Now, the actual bottles from that batch that were found in the hut, those are all in the hands of private collectors. Those can't be had for love or money. Okay. But of course, everyone wanted to taste it and see what it was like. So some guys, they got permission from an owner of one of the bottles to take a sample, and they sucked a little bit of it out, and they did a chemical analysis of it. They went back and they did a lot of historical and documentary research to find out what that whiskey was made of. And unfortunately, it was a blend, which made it a lot harder to reconstruct.
Yeah.
But they did find out what it was a blend of. They went back to as many of those distilleries that still existed, found out what that recipe had been back then, and with the ability to be able to test the output by comparing it to the sample that they'd taken, they reconstructed it, and they sell it, and you can find it. And the thing is, it's only $26, and it's on the bottom shelf. So I think, that's going to be crap. I don't want that. But I swear I'm not being paid by the company, but this really punches above its weight. This is very good stuff. It's definitely peaty. It's a blend that includes some of the Isla peaty whiskeys. It's actually not too dissimilar from J&B, if you're familiar with that.
Okay.
I find it rich and enjoyable.
Awesome. Awesome. And I thank you to all our viewers that are tuning in. This is great. Everyone's having a conversation. They love that we started off the show with talking about alcohol, which is, I mean, I love that. I totally love that.
I saw that too. Awesome.
You started Skeptoid. That's what started everything, right?
Yeah. I mean, how
did that start?
Very fortunate. In the podcast that I started doing, Skeptoid, was something that it resonated with a large audience. And so, to my very good fortune, I've been able to do that as a career ever since.
Yeah.
It became full-time in 2010. And in 2012, it was converted to a nonprofit because most of the traction that we were getting was from educators who were using the podcast as part of classroom materials.
Right.
So, now we're a team of, I think we have 6 people on salary. We've got a board of directors, and, we do the whole nonprofit thing and everything. And the podcast is still kind of our bread and butter. But you mentioned a couple of the video series that we also do. And we're pretty much always in production on a documentary film. You mentioned the one, Science Friction, that is just now completed and is just about to go out to the agent and go out and do the whole Hollywood roadshow and everything. It's our feet. Actually, and I haven't even had any yet. It's actually our first full-length feature film documentary that's out for the commercial market.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's super exciting. And when you do this kind of stuff, talking about weird subjects, urban legends, or whatever, you kind of get known for it. And anytime one of these silly TV producers is, Googling, hey, who can we get to be on our episode of, Strange Evidence or whatever it is, I always get called. And so I'm talking to these people all the time, and I do, maybe one out of 8 or 10 of the calls that I get. But those are usually kind of fun.
Yeah.
Go on show and get edited out of context.
So, I mean, why don't we just jump right into that? I mean, I love Here Be Dragons and Principles of Curiosity. I've watched them both. I love them. They are, if anyone's interested, they are almost like beginner's guides into critical thinking. And they really give you, it's not just a boring person that like a boring old guy that's standing up in front of a classroom just talking in a very monotone voice. And
let's be clear. I am a boring old guy with a monotone voice.
You are not.
You can go on.
I enjoy your podcast. I can listen to you talk. I mean, it's kind of a joke. Every time we go on road trips, my wife and I listen to the podcast, and every time you sign off, I mimic you. I'm Brian Dunning, and this is skeptoid.com. Like I got it on point, and I love it because it's funny because we listen so much. But
I have always heard since the beginning. I've heard from people who say, "Hey, I listen to your podcast to put me to sleep at night," and then 5 seconds later they say, "Oh wait, I didn't mean it." I meant that in a good way.
Well, the podcast itself, I mean, it's very. They're short podcasts, so it's not like goes on. They don't go on for an hour or two. They're like average about 15 minutes. Is that right?
12 to 14, yeah.
12 to 14 minutes. But you get a buttload of information in that 12 to 14 minutes, and you thoroughly investigate a topic, which is wonderful. And it's tailored to people that at least from my perspective, that take short drives or go for a walk. It's perfect. Yeah. You can learn something new in your short walk around the neighborhood, and very good information, solid information that's all referenced and it's transcribed on the website, so you can always reference it, right?
It's a commute length podcast. I get that feedback a lot. People love that they can listen to an episode or two, depending on the length of their commute.
I love it. But again, the two films, Here Be Dragons and Principles of Curiosity. If you're curious about critical thinking, these are a good stepping stone. It's a good way to get into it and start understanding it, because I think you explain it good. What made you do those?
I mean, when in 2008, when I did the first film, Here Be Dragons, that had a production crew of one person. That was literally me and a tripod and whatever the cheapest HD video camera on the market was at the time. I did have some people who helped me with some of the computer graphics. I had a great professional Hollywood film composer, Lee Sanders, do an excellent musical score for the whole thing. That really raised its level a lot. But, it wasn't really professionally produced. However, I go back and watch it myself years later, and I say, damn, that was really good. Because I think I just did a really good job of sort of condensing all of the content that I had put out in the podcast and kind of organizing it. Here's logical fallacies. Here's how they get used and abused against you. Here's how to recognize them. It was just a very good presentation. I say that now because I've never really been able to replicate that quality of sort of summarizing my own work. But Here Be Dragons. It's a fine film. It's free on YouTube, and it's at herebedragonsmovie.com. So it's free everywhere we could make it. And then Principles of Curiosity, which came out in 2017. So 9 years later, after Here Be Dragons, that was a fully professional production, with actual Hollywood film crew and everything. It's only 40 minutes, and it was kind of the idea was to just update the concept without being repetitive, without talking about any of the same things that we covered in Here Be Dragons. It's basically a plan for how to tell if something is true or not. It's sort of an easy guide that anyone can follow. Your friend on Facebook posts something, follow these steps, and you can determine whether it's true without having any previous existing expertise or anything. So Principles of Curiosity, principles you follow when you're curious about something.
The 3 C's, which are covered in the principles, are challenge, consider, and conclude.
Yes.
Can you go over those briefly for people?
So your friend posts something on Facebook. Let's just go back to that. He says, vaccines cause autism, whatever. So the first step you should take is to challenge that. You should consider, rather than just embracing it wholeheartedly, as is human nature, and as most of us do when our friends tell us something, you should challenge it. You should, I don't mean openly challenge your friends to his face. I mean, for yourself, you should take, okay, I've been told this, but let's not just accept it. Let's allow the possibility that this might not be literally true as told to me. And that's something that most of us fail to do most of the time. So the second step is to consider, which means you consider alternate explanations.
Right.
So if a kid has autism, again, sticking with the same example, let's consider alternate explanations for how this kid might have autism that don't include because he was given a vaccine. Maybe it's just natural. Maybe it's genetic. Maybe it's just a very unfortunate thing that happens. And it's not always unfortunate, by the way. I don't want to stigmatize autism.
Right.
Many autistic people are awesome. I think 2 friends of mine in particular that I just couldn't possibly love more. But anyway, the third C is to conclude. You take these alternate possibilities that you've considered, and now you conclude which one best fits the evidence and all the other rules that we lay out during the film. And ideally, you should be able to walk away with a better understanding of how the world really works.
That's great. That's what I guess during these shows that I do and when I go out and do lectures, and I'm sure I've seen you do it too during your talks. Mm-hmm. It's promoting that kind of mentality to challenge it. But be nice, like you said, you don't have to be confrontational, or in your face, but you can nicely and politely challenge a claim. And you should do so if there's some doubt, because you don't want to take things at face value, because that's where you get screwed up.
Something that I get emailed almost every day is someone will say, hey, my mom is a QAnon believer, or my dad is taking extract of seaweed to treat his pancreatic cancer. How can I help? Do you have an episode about those things that I can play for them and change their mind? And I always say, no, don't do that. Never, ever directly confront someone's sacred cow. All that's going to accomplish, they're just going to tune you out, and they're not going to want to listen to anything else that you have to say.
Right.
So although, yes, I do have an episode for that, but don't play that one for them. Instead, play this episode that's about something that you both agree with. Here's the reasons why we know the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film was not real. And that's really interesting. And it's something that we can probably all agree with. And your mom, dad, friend, whoever it is, you're trying to persuade will gradually become interested in, these thought processes, the scientific method for how we can tell whether something's real or not. And they will ultimately, on their own, come to reconsider their own belief systems. And it'll bring them around in a way that's much less confrontational and much more likely to be successful.
I like that. I really do. It's something I subscribe to. Just instead of trying to convince somebody of an alternate view, it's better to talk to them and let them come to the conclusion themselves. Yeah. I mean, I think that's
anytime you can avoid challenging their sacred cow, you're a step ahead.
Awesome. So your Skeptoid podcast, I really want to talk about science fiction, but I'm trying to hold off because I'm really excited about that. But,
I'm ready to fill my first one here.
Oh, right. Let's get going. Because I could actually, I'm almost ready for a refill. I'm going to hold off for a little bit.
I should have known you were already well past your first one.
I start drinking before the show starts. Do you drink straight?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Almost exclusively.
Oh, good. Good man. We got a question. I'm going to throw this in before I get going. JD says, Brian, what would you say to people who might argue, but believing in X isn't really harming anyone?
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I say, okay, my grandma thinks her poodle is psychic. That's not hurting anybody. Why should I bother to change my grandma's mind about that? Well, my answer is you shouldn't. There's no upside in changing your grandma's mind about that. However, you need to be mindful of the fact that whatever faulty thought processes led her to that conclusion, who knows where those processes are going to lead her next. Maybe grandma has some important medicine she needs to take, and now she's going to say, oh, I'm just going to go get acupuncture instead, or change my diet. The same thought processes that lead us to harmless wrong conclusions can equally well lead us to harmful wrong conclusions. So really, these principles of critical thinking are super important for everyone. And it makes no difference whether their current belief is a harmful or harmless one.
Right. That's great. That's great. Tim chimes in. He says direct challenge equals double downing on a belief. Mm-hmm. A lot of times. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Totally.
Almost always. There's that thing that the what do they call it? The
backfire effect? Yeah.
Yeah, which I guess kind of got debunked, or I'm not sure I'm not sure where that whole thing left off, but I mean, it whether that's a thing or not, exactly what you say. When you directly challenge someone, they're just going to argue harder and dig in deeper on where they were. Nobody likes to be challenged.
Yeah, confrontation is it's a fight. It's a threat, and I've found that if I'm very direct, and when I have been very direct with somebody and kind of in your face, then it causes people to get angry, and they're ready for a fight, and that's all they want to do. There's no reason anymore, because now you're in a fight, and all you're doing is thinking about, I'm going to fight, I'm going to throw punches, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that I'm right. So I found over the years much better to just start talking. Have a pleasant, polite conversation. Have a beer. Have a couple beers and just talk about it. And
find the common ground.
Yes,
common ground is such a great thing, because we all have it. Every one thing I try to keep in mind is whether you're a hardcore skeptic like me that doesn't believe in anything, or whether you're someone who considers themselves very open-minded and goes to psychics and communicates with ghosts, or everything that I probably don't believe in. The most important thing is what we both have in common, and that's that we're both very interested in what we believe is real and wanting to know what's true about the world. That's the most important thing. That's what makes us all fundamentally on the same side.
That's cool. I like that. That's a good idea. Yeah. So with the Skeptoid episodes, you have, like I said, I think you have 740. I think.
Yeah, I think I recorded 741 today.
Okay. And you've covered pretty much everything. I mean, I guess my first question when I wrote that down, because I started writing notes, a lot of notes. When I started writing down, I was like 740 episodes. Are you worried about ever running out of a topic to talk about?
Not even remotely. So I'll go to my folder right now of ideas. Let's see how many are in here right now. Oh, exactly 100. So there are exactly 100 documents that are in some state of notes being collected for future episodes. So at one a week, that's 2 years right there.
Yeah.
And people still send them in literally every day. You know, a lot of them I've already covered. A lot of them aren't really appropriate for the show. But almost every day I end up adding one to that folder. It's crazy. No, they'll never run out.
Yeah, I'm constantly doing that. Like these notebooks that I have, I probably have, I don't know, maybe 100 or so of these just stacked. There's piles of them on the other side of the computer here, just with notes, because I'm the same way. Like I hear something on TV or on the radio or on a podcast, I start writing it down, and then over the next couple of weeks or so, I keep adding notes here and there as I come across it. So I can definitely see. I mean, when I saw 740, I was like, that's a lot. Holy shit! But there's so much stuff out there.
It's yeah. I mean, I hate to say the tip of the iceberg because it's such a cliche, but yeah, I mean, a lot of the stories people send me is some urban legend, some old story that turns out to be really obscure, and it's a great story, but it's so obscure that it's like, this isn't really not really accomplishing anything by kind of challenging this one because. I go back to the fact that we're an educational nonprofit, okay, and we have a mission that we're expected to fulfill. That's the reason our donors support us.
Right.
And this includes not only basically our mission statement is we produce educational content that's entertaining and teaches the concepts of scientific skepticism and critical thinking, and it's fun and free for everyone for general audiences. That's not the exact wording, but it's something along those lines. So that includes our films and the podcast and everything. But if there's a story that's just so obscure, unless there is some kind of a lesson to be learned from it, and sometimes there is, then it's not really part of our mission to just, I'm not out to just debunk something.
Right.
People often say, "Oh, it's a debunking podcast," but no, that debunking is an inherently negative process. All you're doing in debunking is telling someone your ghost isn't real. That's a horrible show. Instead, debunking is often kind of a necessary first step. We say, okay, well, the ghost isn't real, but here's why that story exists, and here's what actually happened that persuaded people the ghost was real. Or maybe here's the guy, it's often some charlatan out of history who was, making money trying to, scam people and try to create some ghost story or something. There's always something like that. It's why the story exists and what it accomplishes sociologically and how we can make ourselves better people by understanding that thing. That's what makes a good episode. And unless that's there, then, just debunking some old legend doesn't do any good. It's not a good show.
Right. That's a lesson I've learned over the years. Because when I started writing, I wrote a blog, and it was just, I had no editing, I had no supervision. But the more I grew, I've learning from like your episodes. Ben Rafford was always a major influence on me, and just learning that it's more than debunking. It's giving the history, and that's what I really love. I love including the last article I wrote was about the Spiricom, which was in itself, because it was just used by a ghost hunting show, that alone wasn't really interesting. What was interesting was the history behind it and how it came about. And I wrote about that, and that was the majority of the article. And I was really happy with it. So, and the feedback that I got was that people learned about this history and the people that were involved. And not only that, but the humanity of the people. It's not just, these are not characters in a play. There's actually people, and when you see people, you see like a debunking show. Unfortunately, I think a lot of these debunking shows just attack the people, they make them look stupid. And sometimes they're not always stupid.
No. In fact, that's very rarely the case. we're actually, I'm not sure if I can tell this, so why the hell not? We're developing
Keep drinking.
We're developing.
Keep drinking, and you'll be fine.
So we're developing a concept for public broadcasting for a potential PBS TV series, and I think there's a working title that it's not. There's a working title that's something like "The Human Behind the Story," because for virtually, I don't want to say virtually every, but for many famous urban legends, it turns out to come down to one person who was the initiator, creator, promoter, author, inventor of whatever grew into this popularly believed urban legend. And in a very few cases, that would be someone like Harry Price, a guy from history who made his living by pretending a house was haunted and, scaring the people who lived there and writing books about it. That's the case sometimes. Almost always, it's someone who was very genuine in their belief and had a fascinating story over how and why this urban legend kind of grew around them. One example, I know we've got about 16 sample episodes, and one of them is the Philadelphia experiment. The famous case of the ship, the World War II ship that disappeared and reappeared, and guys were melted into the decks and all of this stuff. And that entire story I don't think I'm spoiling this for anyone. I think this is fairly generally well known by now. But that entire story came down to one guy who was just a very, very extremely introverted, nerdy guy. He literally lived in his parents' basement, and he was very, very eccentric. He any book in the house, he wrote, he filled the margins with annotations or just mindless dribble. I mean, he was very obsessive about it. And he did this to a UFO book, and he mailed it to the Navy's Office of Special Investigations. I'm probably getting that name wrong. And somehow, some of the stuff that he'd written in the margin, they thought, I wonder if this is actually some Navy project that someone's working on. And I mean, I don't need to go through the whole thing, but that was the genesis of what grew into the Philadelphia experiment. Nothing ever happened. We know the history of that ship. We know it wasn't there at the time. It was in combat. And it's very easy to disprove everything that's factually claimed about the Philadelphia experiment. But what's interesting is this character, this guy who is at the core of it, a fascinating, fascinating guy. And the story is it's just marvelous. And I just love those kinds of things. And we've got that for, like I said, 16 sample episodes, but that's 16 out of 740 shows I've done, at least 300 of which we could make into this. So when you're talking about a particular personality, a human being with real human motivations, maybe human frailties, whatever it is, that to me is such a much more fascinating story than just, hey, did you hear about this Navy ship that disappeared? Blah, blah. I saw it on YouTube. That's not interesting anymore.
But it's on the internet. But I totally agree with you. That the story about the people involved are always more fascinating than the actual event sometimes. It's just
yeah.
I love learning about the people and why they did things, why they did the things they did, why they wrote what they did, and how things kind of got out of their control sometimes. In
many cases, yeah. In many cases. I'm seeing some fascinating questions going by that I'd love to talk about, and they're going by faster than I can keep up with them.
Let's see. What do we got? We got one from JD that says, with 750 episodes, surely you revisited a topic more than once. How do you keep it fresh and interesting and not rehash the same information?
Yeah, I've never done an episode on the same subject twice. That's just there is always more to do. I only did the Loch Ness Monster, kind of one of the absolute foundational urban legend mysteries. I only did that a couple of years ago. I still haven't done the Shroud of Turin. I mean, there's a number of the basics that I haven't even gotten around to yet. The only exception to that is that I have feedback and error correction episodes. Yes. About every 10th episode or so, I think. I'm not sure. I do an episode that consists entirely of corrections to past episodes. If I get something wrong, and I often do, and sometimes it's something really stupid, like I said the wrong word, or I said east when I meant west, or,
Yeah.
but if I get a piece of science wrong, or if there is a better reference or a later historical publication that I missed in the research, someone guaranteed will write in and tell me about it. And so I'll put that in a special episode that consists of maybe 6 or 8 of those corrections to previous shows, and I'll always update the web pages for those shows. I don't often get a chance to update the original podcast. In fact, never. I wish I could, but I can update the web page. That's about as close as I'm able to do practically. So with that exception, I never have to retread the same territory. But
that's awesome. I mean, just because I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and I haven't come across one that does that. Occasionally you'll see, like, during an episode, somebody might say, oh, and like in the beginning, this episode we have a correction, and then boom, they move on to the topic of that episode. And you're the first podcast that I've come across, at least for me, where you do entire episodes on the corrections. And I absolutely love that, because that's showing that you're an honest person. You're not trying to hide the fact that you were wrong. I mean, quite the opposite. You almost flaunt it, like, yep, I fucked up.
Well, you know what? People love that. The reaction you're expressing right now is a very common one. And so my advice to other podcasters is do that. Your audience will absolutely love you for it. And also, I mean, from a purely practical standpoint, with the exception of 2020, where I'm not really doing much of any traveling, in a usual year, traveling all over the place. We're doing film shoots or whatever, or going to conferences. And, I always have to be a certain number of episodes ahead, because I'm going to be out of the office next week or whatever. And the show still has to come out on schedule. And sometimes you fall behind if it's been a particularly busy month, and sometimes the episode you're recording now is the one that has to come out in 2 days, and that's not professional. You can't run a business that way. So these error correction episodes, they're actually less work to produce. I don't have to spend nearly as much time doing original research on those as I do on a regular episode. So in addition to being a great way to, just like you said, it does keep you honest. It makes the show better. It makes the content a better resource. Your listeners love you for it. And it actually has practical benefits from a purely production standpoint. So it's something I encourage every podcaster to do.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I mean, I don't get a chance of doing an episode dedicated to my mistakes, because I really I don't well, that's true. Cheers, my friend.
You got a much bigger cup than me.
Well, I have a pirate skull too. You have a kitty glass. All right, so let me see. JD's like rocking the questions. He always comes up with good questions. In Mick West's book, Escaping the Rabbit Hole, I believe he distinguished between using debunking in the past tense, as in something was debunked, and debunking as starting with a preconceived bias about what's possible or not. Would you agree that using debunking in the past tense is not only harmless, but useful?
Using debunking in the past tense. Using debunking in the past tense is something was debunked, and the difference between that and debunking is a starting point with a preconceived bias. Yeah, deciding that it's BS before you've even done your research on it. Debunking in the past tense, I got to say I'm not entirely sure I understand the question.
Yeah, can you rephrase that, JD? Not sure what you're asking here.
But I do appreciate the question very much, and I have read Mick's book. Mick is a good guy.
I recommended it on the last show, and JD ordered it, and he's loving it so far. Yeah. So let's see what else we got. Mike says, I think in most disciplines, debunking is just par for the course. The important thing is how you do the debunking. As a musician, I don't tell young musicians, don't do that. Are you stupid? I find it works better if I go, hey, have you tried playing that passage like this? And I show them what's right instead of telling them what's wrong.
Yeah. That's when I first started Skeptoid, obviously I had no idea where it was going to lead. I thought it was just going to be, a fun hobby for a couple of months. And my episodes in the first, 10, 20, 30, 40 were probably too snarky, probably too cynical, and probably doing, exactly what you're talking about. I remember there was one on rods. Rods, the photographic phenomenon.
Oh, I'm familiar with those. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. You see, in case someone's not familiar.
Okay.
If you have the light behind you, the sun behind you, and you take a photograph against a dark background, and an insect flies between you and the dark background, brightly illuminated insect. For the shutter speed of your camera, if it's a quarter of a second, and the insect flies this distance over that quarter of a second and beats his wings 10 times, let's say, you're going to get this funny looking shape that looks like a rod with this weird sort of undulating fin going front to the back. And there is a subculture of people who either don't understand or refuse to accept that explanation and believe that it is a type of undiscovered creature that is not visible to the naked eye, but that only shows up on film. And these people are very serious. No, they're not stupid. No, they're not hoaxing or lying. They're honestly mistaken. And there can be a variety of reasons that's the case. Now, I would do a much better job on that episode today. But when I did it back then, it was probably episode number 5 or something like that. That is like the stupidest thing. How could you be that dumb and not see what's going on here? So, lessons learned.
Right.
I've been guilty of every sort of, logical error and bad method of trying to persuade people that there is. And I just hope that with enough practice, I've gotten better at it over the years.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I guess because I started out as a ghost hunter. I unfortunately I grew up where I believed a whole bunch of this stuff, like all the Loch Ness monsters, ghosts, and UFOs, all that stuff. And I kind of, as I learned more, as I started understanding the photographic anomalies were just photographic errors, operator error on my part. That I was like realizing, okay, this is wrong. I'm doing it wrong. And then the more I read about like science journals and magazines, I realized I was doing everything wrong. When I made that switch, I kind of almost flipped the switch from believer to skeptic. And I think I went a little too far and went from believer to cynic. And I was pretty much a dick. I was looking for a fight and looking to take out, I guess, my mistakes that I had made on other people. So instead of just going in and trying to politely explain things, I was like, that's not a ghost. That's this. You're wrong. You're stupid. Exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But over the years, I gradually learned that was a horrible way to go about it and completely changed what I was doing.
It's a lesson we've all had to learn the hard way, usually.
Yes.
Hey, grab Bob Linzinski's question. I apologize, Bob, if I've mispronounced your name.
Where are we at here?
Number 4 or 5 from the bottom.
Let's see. Long one?
Yeah.
I do not see psychology topic on your page. Do you debunk any psychological principles? As an example, one of the topics I cover every year is how a group of psychologists put out evidence, in quotes, in the early 1900s that, quote, showed that black people were inferior to white people.
So I believe that what you're referring to was that book, The Bell Curve. I did do an episode on that. I'm not sure what category it was in. It might have been in general science. And let's see, that episode was a few years ago, and it's difficult for me to remember everything about it. That's one thing that's a downside for having done so many different shows. People ask me about something that I spent a full week, full time researching, calling people on the phone, talking to the scientists who wrote the paper, and then a month later, I can't remember any of it because I've done 5 more topics since then. Anyway, Bob, I did do an episode on that. If you go to Skeptoid and search for the bell curve, because that was a far more nuanced topic than it was reported. The pushback was that No, the research didn't show that at all. The media completely misrepresented it because that's a more sensational headline. Science proves that black people are inferior, or whatever it showed. I think this may have been part of the episode on IQ testing.
Narrator dialogue. Okay. Button. Narrator heading level. Exiting narrator.
What's happening?
I don't know. I lost everything. I don't know where you went.
I'm here.
I see you, but unfortunately, I don't know where everything went. Let me see. Go ahead. You keep explaining. I'll try and fix this.
Okay. Apologize for that. I believe that this may have. I might be conflating two different episodes, but there is a phenomenon in IQ testing called. I'm forgetting it. The something effect, where about every 10 years, I might be getting that number wrong, IQ tests go up on average of a certain number of points. And this effect is certain populations are ahead of other populations on this effect. And when you look at all of the many correlating figures, it's household wealth and income, education of the parents of the kids who's getting these IQ test scores, their socioeconomic status. There's a whole bunch of influences, and it's completely invalid to say that kids in this neighborhood from this population are dumber than kids in this neighborhood from this population. I wish this episode was more fresh in my memory, but there is a lot there, and it's a fascinating topic. So if you go to Skeptoid and you search for the bell curve, and also you can search for IQ testing, they may be the same episode. I'm not certain, but that is a very nuanced topic for which the actual science is encouraging and should not be taken as discouraging or racist, or we need to throw stones at scientists who published something invalid. They didn't. Their work was valid. It was good. It's been misrepresented and misunderstood as well. Genuinely misunderstood, not fallaciously misunderstood. But it's cool stuff.
Good question. Wow. That's great. Let's see what else we got. We got long question, Josh. But honestly, we've had this talk. I believe that we have this collective must find the next scientific concept to help us see more clearly into the concept of paranormal. There is a scientific reason and possibility for any and all video evidence, even if that means waiting for our science to evolve and progress. Oh, Josh, we've had this talk several times. Josh is a good guy. But
I hear a butt coming.
What?
He's a good guy, but what?
No, he is a good guy. But I don't agree with this concept. Some of the people that watch the show believe that science just hasn't caught up to what could possibly be what we would, I guess, refer to as paranormal. And I understand where they're going, where they're coming from. But I think the problem is that most paranormal experiences, at least that I've come across, are explainable. They're very explainable. But I don't think the people that are presenting them have tried to explain them. I think that most of the time it's just taken at face value and accept it right away and then present it as such.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, to me, that question kind of sounds like it's misrepresenting what the word science is. Science is not a book with a printed list of predefined conclusions. This is what science believes. It is not that at all. It is a process. It is a method. So when you say science hasn't evolved enough yet, well, the method doesn't change. The conclusions that we reach through that method are constantly changing. They're constantly evolving and improving. There's not a science on Earth, anything from mathematics to geology, that's not improving every day by scientists following the scientific method. That method doesn't need to evolve. It works great. But one of the things that it needs is an observation to explain. That's kind of basically what science is about. It's the way that we learn and understand and explain something that we see in nature, something that we can observe and detect. And to my knowledge, there has never been a repeatable observation that indicates something unexplained or unexplainable. I know there's a lot of belief, and I know that there's a lot of people, myself included, all of us, who have weird experiences sometimes, something that we don't know what happened. But unless there's a repeatable observation that we can go in there and we can measure, we can see what's going on here. Look at this weird thing. Then science doesn't have a foothold. There is nothing there yet for science to explain.
Right.
So, we need that foothold.
Just wanted to clarify. No, I meant the other side. On the other side, and he followed up with, I feel that all paranormal evidence is bogus because there is a valid scientific reason for all quote unquote paranormal.
I would agree that there certainly is, and I can't say certainly, there probably is, but I believe there is a natural explanation for anything that people interpret as being the paranormal. However, that doesn't mean we ever know what that is.
Right.
There's all kinds of experiences people are going to have, going to a haunted house, talking to a psychic, whatever it is. And, oh, this really weird thing happened. What was that? Well, I don't know. We didn't have the right equipment there to measure what happened. I don't know what it was. I don't know what you heard. I didn't hear it. And complicating that is the fact that every minute of every day, everywhere all of us go, we all have personal biases. We have preconceived notions. We have our preferred conclusions about the way we want the world to work that we try to shoehorn everything we observe into. We're all full of these perceptual errors and misconceptions. So any personal anecdote about what my experience was, what this weird thing was that I saw or experienced, my verbal explanation the next day to you of what experience, that is not something that any scientist should take as a factual observation to proceed from. So unfortunately, we just have a lot of really crappy anecdotes that every single one of which was honestly collected by the person who experienced it. But the fact is, it just wasn't simply collected in an observable, repeatable scientific method. That's what needs to happen. Someone needs to find a haunted house where the ghost walks down the hall, every time you tap on the wall and call his name.
Yes.
So we can actually see, okay, what's going on here? What are the parameters of a ghost? What's his temperature? What's his makeup? What is, there's no characteristics of a ghost. There is not a single thing that we can say, a ghost is like this. Therefore, my experience is a ghost because it matches those characteristics.
Right.
We've never caught a ghost. We've never been able to measure a ghost or test a ghost. So there is no baseline for what a ghost is.
Right. I love it. You said that so nice. Very politely. I love that.
I doubt everyone agrees with you, but
well, yeah. I mean, it's okay though. I mean, that's what this show is about. We're discussing things and we're just talking about it. And if you don't agree, you don't agree. We can talk about it more later. Bob comes in again. He says, since you cover science, this has bothered me over the years. Psychology is often seen as pseudoscience since it is mostly theoretical, but physics is considered a science and is mostly theoretical. Any thoughts on any part of that? Psychology being a pseudoscience or my logic?
Yeah, I mean, there's what we call hard sciences and there's soft sciences. Geology is a hard science. Here's a rock and here's, its chemical signature. Psychology is more of a soft science because you don't have things that are necessarily measurable, but that doesn't mean that they're not testable and that we can't design controlled experiments to learn things. So my wife is a marriage and family therapist, so I'm always referring to her copy of the DSM and everything. So I get plenty of exposure to this. But, psychology is a fascinatingly rich field. There's behavioral psychology. There's behavioral economics. The experimental psychology is wonderful. It is absolutely possible to learn things about the human psyche and about the way our people behave. and explanations for aberrant behavior, like, murderers and things like this. And we can design scientific experiments. We can control those experiments. And it's because the scientific method is pretty darn thorough and really does offer us whatever tools it is we need to test anything that might be testable. So it is a soft science, yes, but it is still a science, and it is still confined by the scientific method. An interesting footnote on that, though, as many people have heard, there's a reproducibility problem in psychology. And, what that means is, I'll just back up one bit and explain what scientific consensus is. Consensus in the general use of the word means, hey, Kenny and I and a couple of our buddies, we kind of agree on something. That's our consensus. But in science, the word consensus has a very different definition. Like when you're talking about climate change and what's the consensus of climate scientists.
Drink more.
There's broad experimental replication. The same experiment with the same parameters has been run at different labs all around the world and come up with the same results. That's what consensus means in science. Very different meaning. So repeatability is key to science, because anytime you run an experiment, there's a chance that your results are due to some, error in the data or some fluke. We can control for those most of the time, but there's always going to be some variation in our results. So repeatability is absolutely essential. You've got to design a test, and other people have to be able to replicate that. Psychology has a replication problem. I just talked about how, yes, we can certainly design a controlled psychological experiment and we can get results. Yay. But what we're finding is that those results are repeatable, not nearly as often as they are in other sciences. So this is something that is a kind of an exciting and dynamic area of current research right now. We don't throw the whole scientific method out the window. We don't say science is flawed. We don't say, therefore, aliens are real. We simply continue to refine our work and to refine our methods and find out what's going on here.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Let's see. I love it. I love how knowledgeable you are. This is awesome talking to you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. JD says, with respect to what Brian said about science, here. Now I'd like to ask a question. Has there been a topic that you covered that you consider the most difficult in terms of the amount of research needed to be done?
Yes.
There we go. There's your answer.
It was the JFK assassination, obviously. I put off the JFK assassination episode for half a decade because the primary source on that book, Vince Bugliosi's book called Reclaiming History. I believe it is 1,400 pages long. Paperback, it's this thick. It is an enormous book. He actually did all of that work. It took him 10 years, but he talked to everyone who's still alive. He talked to everyone who believes every possible version of all the conspiracy theories. He delineated, I can't remember, but it was some numbers of different possible triggermen, hundreds of different conspiracy theories, hundreds of different people behind the plot. And there's people who believe all of these things, and he talks to all of them, and he debunked all of them. It took him 10 years. It is a staggering work. Okay, my show's 10 minutes. How am I going to do that? How am I going to write a 1,500-word summary of this episode? So what I did in that case, and I've had to do this in a number of cases, instead of trying to address the conspiracy theories, which is just an impossible task, not appropriate for a show with my parameters, I just spent the time talking about how and why these beliefs exist and what role it has played in society. You can, in 5 years, you'll look back at the QAnon conspiracy theory, and you can see how that intertwined with current events and was a legitimate force. Well, in the same way, the JFK conspiracy theories were sort of a legitimate influence in pop culture for a period of time. So there's things you can talk about like that when it's simply not practical to get into to try and repeat Vince Bugliosi's work or do it any kind of justice in 10 minutes.
Magic bullet. I love it.
Thank you, JD.
Let's see. Bob says, I can agree to that, Brian, especially when it comes to psychological theories that were done under unethical circumstances, like the Stanford prison experiment that you cannot replicate today, or even to a lesser degree, the baby Albert experiment or the Bobo doll experiment. I haven't gone through any of these yet. Actually, I'm currently researching, because I do a podcast on Saturday nights with two other guys, and we try to tackle topics. And tomorrow's topic is ethics, which is a big topic to tackle for a paranormal podcast. But we're doing ethics on pretty much human experiments. And I have these actually on my list to research. But what do you think of ethics? What's your...
So, I mean, the interesting way to ask that question is, what do you think of MK Ultra? So, in case anyone's been living under a rock, MK Ultra was this long-running experiment by the CIA where they were trying to see if mind control was a possibility. There was a famous case out of Europe. I'm going to have to pass on the details because the episode's on my website. You can find it. Where there was a guy who was a political prisoner, and he was made to say something on camera that obviously this guy never would have said. And the CIA, and of course, the guy only said it because they were beating him when the camera was turned off, right? But the CIA is watching this and saying, wait a minute, maybe they actually got this guy to believe that. And so the CIA, very reasonably, this is a legitimate national defense and intelligence topic, is mind control a thing? And is that something that we might be able to do against our Cold War enemies? And most of the experimentation that they did was using LSD. They're trying to see, can we slip LSD into someone's drink and then somehow find a way that we can mind control? So, this is happening in the 1950s and 1960s. And scientific ethics were not what they are today. In fact, probably everything that happened in MK Ultra was legal and ethical according to the standards of the day. No way according to today's standards, giving people LSD without their consent or knowledge and informed consent and all that stuff. These are the kinds of things that they did in MK Ultra. Now, the CIA is, a bunch of suits and ties in Washington, D.C. They don't know anything about science. What they do to conduct experimentation like this is they take their money, because that's one thing they do have, a giant bankroll. They set up an anonymous front company, ABC Research Corporation, and then they make grants to universities. And MK Ultra essentially consisted of, 1,000 university grants where professors in their labs were trying various experiments with LSD to see if they could do certain things. That's what it consisted of. By the standards of the day, it was not unusual, it was not unethical, but it was very real. It absolutely did happen, and a lot of it was totally unethical according to today's standards. So it's a cool story, and it's a cautionary tale too.
Right. Wow, man, this is a great show. I love this. We're like covering like a wide range of topics. I love this. We got Mike chiming in here. He says, Brian, how do you not modify your output to explain these topics effectively for people who may be tuning in, who may not be very scientifically literate, or who may not regularly exercise critical thinking? Is there a method in which you can dumb the message down so everyone can understand without watering down the message?
I never assume that anyone knows anything. I mean, whenever I start doing an episode, I don't know anything about it. So I assume everyone starts from that same place. I never just assume that everyone understands what this term means. And if I do, that's a mistake, and I shouldn't do it. I'm often accused of being hoity-toity. That's for some reason that's the term that comes up all the time. It's just the way that I speak, anyway.
Hoity-toity.
But I hope that's just referring to the language choice and not to the conceptual content, because I do try to assume that every listener is in the same place that I was before I started learning anything about the topic. So,
yeah, I take the same approach whenever I write about a topic. It's how would I approach it? What questions would I ask? I usually write a rough draft, and then I look at it and say, all right, I have a question about this. I have a question. What does this mean? I don't know what that means. And I have to, if I had to look it up, I try to explain it. That's why, like, well, the column that I write for Skeptical Inquirer is supposed to be 1,500 words.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever had that few words. I average like 3,000 to 4,000 words. Easy. Just because I have to explain things, because if I read an article that just had terminology, which I wasn't used to, I would ask, like, what's that mean? So I'm constantly trying to explain what that means. And so it runs into a lot.
There's always trade-offs.
Yes.
An episode I was writing this week, it was important that there was a lost submarine that had sunk, and it was important that the method used to locate it had to do with Bayesian search theory. Now, this by itself was already a sidebar in the episode, but it was important to note that the method used was Bayesian search theory to point out that it was not something else, which is kind of what the rest of the episode was about. Now, there's no way I was going to explain Bayesian search theory, which I barely understand myself. Bayesian statistics it's a search theory based on Bayesian statistics, which is totally complicated, and it's counterintuitive in a number of ways. I couldn't afford to go down that path. It was important to mention that, but I couldn't explain it. It's a short format show. There's just no way it could have been done. So I would, in a case like that, I would say they used a method called Bayesian search theory, which is, has to do with statistics, something like that. Leave it like that. It's not important to the episode. It's just important that we know that it was not this other thing.
Okay.
So, I always try to find the balancing act. And at some point, you have to stop following every thread, and you have to leave some stones unturned.
Right.
It's by the nature of the beast.
Because you would never get done. You would never, ever finish an episode if you kept going. Yeah.
Exactly. Literally true.
Yeah. So, basically, on average, how long does it take you to complete an episode?
So at the beginning of the show, it was legitimately a full week of full-time research. And because we do so many other projects now, and I'm also the executive director of the nonprofit, which is a full-time job in itself, I realistically spend about 3 full-time days on the average episode. That's not enough. And I wish I had more time. In a sense, it's nice that it's a short show, only 12 to 14 minutes, and it's about 1,750 words written. So it's nice that I have a short, a small project to do with that short amount of time, only 3 days. However, I mean, Mark Twain's, I think it's Mark Twain, who said, if I had more time, I'd have written a shorter letter. It's actually more work to condense something accurately. Right. Than it is to just, spit out everything you've researched. Yep. So it is hard. It is a challenge. I'm lucky I have the benefit of almost 14 years experience doing the show now. I can work a lot more efficiently, and I can research a lot more efficiently than I used to. And also we've got better research tools available on the internet. We have more resources available to us now. So I have accounts on, all of the JSTOR, all of the services where I can get access to scientific papers and everything. So it helps. The tools are better. The work process is efficient, but it's never enough time.
Never. That's always a problem. Time is always a problem. And you are damn good at condensing shit. Let me tell you, because I do understand.
Giving the appearance that I've condensed it effectively.
There you go. I understand when I have like 2 paragraphs and I'm like, I gotta condense 2 paragraphs into 2 lines. how do I do that? And you cut and trim and you try to you find other words to substitute. I know it's difficult. I understand how difficult it is. So bravo, you do a really good job at doing that. Because
you have to go maybe every 5 minutes. You got a great subject, something that you really want to talk about, but you say, I just can't go there. I just can't take the time to go there.
So I don't know if you know about this, but Josh says, I'd love to know Brian's opinion on the Blue Planet project with all of the over-the-top UFO reverse engineering concepts inside.
I know all of those words, except I don't believe I've heard of the Blue Planet project. I mean, I've heard of a lot of other people who claim they're doing UFO reverse engineering, but Kenny, do you know that well enough to give me a quick overview?
I actually don't know. I don't know what the Blue Planet project is.
Josh, I'm sorry, we would give you an inaccurate answer if we tried to proceed without further information.
It's all right. I mean, I'm going to write it. This is what I usually do during the show. If I don't know what it is, I'm writing it down. I'll look it up after the show, and hopefully I'll have a better answer or some kind of opinion next week. But maybe that's a topic. If it's worth it,
Yeah, sure.
You can cover.
I've really been hitting this stupid thing with To the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge and all of his cronies who have been just carpet bombing the press for 3 years now with their bullshit story that the Pentagon is investigating UFOs. The Pentagon is not. To the Stars Academy says they are. And everyone is printing their press releases. And it's just been so frustrating for me, for friends of mine who work in the aerospace journalism industry, astronomers, anyone who does science communication has been so frustrated by the media's promotion of this total, just invented nonsense from To the Stars Academy. There was another one today, in fact. Just about 2 hours ago, I saw that Daily Beast ran a story that they said they got from CNN saying the Pentagon now says that it's going to create a special task force on UFOs or something to that effect. And it's just simply absolutely false. This whole thing with UFO disclosure and everything, I mean, it's nonsense. It's really hard to think of a way to do an episode about this when the thing that you're supposedly going to be talking about doesn't actually exist. The Pentagon doesn't have any of these programs. They simply don't care. It's not real. It's a fiction invented by these nutcases in Silicon Valley. And I'm very frustrated by that, as you can probably tell. It's very tough to get out your message when all of the news outlets have essentially fired their science editorial staff, and they just take press releases like this and they just print it uncritically without any fact checking or anything. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and we see that more and more. I mean, at least I have, where news stories are coming out and there's no integrity. There's no pride in your work. There's no fact checking. It's just, let's put it out there. They had like the Tic Tac video and the other the recent videos that came out, and it's just like, here it is. Government says UFOs, and you just go with the whole conspiracy theories. Like, no, asshole, it's not.
The interesting thing is that it reveals a very difficult problem, and that's that the rise of the internet, what it did with the democratization of content, and it made it very easy for anyone to sit down at their computer, and in 5 minutes they can get the news of the day, right?
Right.
So nobody had to pay for newspaper subscriptions anymore, and nobody has to buy magazines anymore. So the news agencies have all, in these past 20 years, faced a very, very real crisis. And firing their science editors was not a choice that they made lightly. It was a do this or die. Right. They had to completely change their business model, and hiring teams of editors, keeping teams of professional editors and fact checkers on staff is simply not possible under the business models that the current internet kind of enforces and imposes on them all. So it's a difficult problem. There's always going to be a role for independent science communication, like what we're doing here at Skeptoid Media.
Skeptoid.com.
But it's, unless you own airwaves or something, it's very difficult to get a get a slice of the pie, to get any listener share.
Whew. All right, so I do want to get into. We're kind of caught up on most of the questions, I think, but I want to get into science friction.
Yes.
Really want to get into that because I think this is a amazing project, and I'm totally behind it. So, can you give us like a brief summary of what science friction is?
So science friction it's a film about scientists who have been edited out of context or misquoted by the popular media. The classic example is a scientist who goes on a show on History Channel and he says, here's how the pyramids were built. And then when you watch the show, it sounds like this scientist is saying aliens built the pyramid. So this is something that anyone who has gone on any of these shows, myself included, has happened to us, if not every time, most of the time. We get sliced and diced and edited, and the directors and the producers are just using and abusing these experts to promote these false, sensationalized stories. So Science Friction is a full-length feature documentary film it consists almost entirely of interviews with people to whom this has happened. And we show what happened. We show here's the fake footage, how it was edited out of context, and now here's a scientist telling us what he actually said, and we give him a chance to correct the record and put the truth out there. It is, I hope, scary and shocking to everyone who watches it. I hope it's infuriating to everyone who's watching it. The film is finished, but we just took it out of post-production right now. It is just about to go out on the road to the agents and try and get a distribution deal. And the reason we're doing that, instead of just putting it out there free like we did with our previous films, is because we need more people to see it. Mm-hmm. Again, we're a nonprofit. Our donors support us because they believe in the importance of getting this kind of content out to a large number of people. Now, when you just put something out there free on the internet, you put it on YouTube, you put it on your website, you send it to people on USB drives, not that many people are going to see it. But when it has a commercial distribution deal, now you've got real companies with real marketing budgets out there promoting it. You've got Netflix or Prime actually advertising it and putting on their home screen. You've got HBO or Showtime, what have you, putting it on forefront on their networks. So having a commercial distribution deal is not a money-making venture for us. We don't have any expectation of getting anything out of it. It is simply to get it in front of more people. So it's not something that I can just show everyone today, right, because it's not going to be ours to give away once we do a distribution deal. However, since we're an educational nonprofit, again, one of the things that we're writing into the deal is we retain all the educational rights. We're going to be able to give it away to schools, colleges, universities. We're going to produce free educational materials that come along with it, so teachers will be able to show it to a classroom and then create lesson plans around it. And what we hope to achieve is a generation of students who are better equipped to recognize when they're being lied to and how to tell true information from ancient aliens.
That's fucking awesome. I mean, to put it simply,
I think it's rewarding.
Yes. When I first heard about the project, I was fully behind it. I love the idea. I love the concept. It's beautiful. And JD agrees. It sounds freaking awesome. Which is funny, his comment here, because isn't Ben Stein?
Ben Stein, we do have a segment on Expelled. Richard Dawkins is in our film for 2 projects that edited him out of context and made it sound like he was saying the opposite of what it did. For Expelled, for example, if you just walk into the movie theater and you watch the movie Expelled was Ben Stein's movie promoting biblical creation as the origin of the universe. And you see Ben interviewing Richard Dawkins, the eminent evolutionary biologist from England, and apparently getting Dawkins to admit that he believes that there was a creator, and it may have been aliens, but there was a creator who created the human race. Now, needless to say, Richard Dawkins did not actually say that. This was a case of moving questions around, clever editing, moving Ben Stein's question around to Richard Dawkins' answer, putting the answer in front of the question you preferred to have it come out to, and just some clever techniques like that to misrepresent what the guy was saying. There was a smaller movie out of Australia that they did the same thing to him, and we have both those examples in the film. So again, we're trying to fight back against guys like Ben Stein who are trying to persuade you, see, even your favorite scientists believe this bullshit narrative.
Right.
That's not true. And we're trying to give the scientists a chance to show that it's not true.
How often do you think this happens?
It doesn't happen very often, but the fact that it happens at all is still a lot. You can go on these shows and 9 times out of 10, the worst thing that's going to happen to you is they're just going to cut out 99% of what you said and just leave in the part where you said, wow, this is a really weird mystery. And they're not going to show your explanation of the mystery. And just leave viewers with the impression that all you did, you can't answer it either. But it's that one time out of 100 that they're actually going to do this really bad stuff and literally cut words out of your sentences like they did with Ben Radford in the example that he showed.
Yes.
They're going to, like with our shark expert, who what a nice guy, and I'm spacing on his name right now, who they literally grafted his second answer onto the first question. Do you believe in the monster shark? Yes, I believe it lives right here in this bayou. No, that was his answer to a completely unrelated question. I mean, it can be as blatant as that, and often is. But it doesn't happen. Like I say, it doesn't happen very often, but that it happens at all is way too much,
right,
and still a lot.
I found it fascinating, and I cut me off if I say something I'm not supposed to. But I found it fascinating because I was honored to have a preview of it, and I got to watch the almost like 99.8% finished film. And as you mentioned, like Ben Radford had a part in it, and seeing, because he recorded his interview, and when it's presented side by side with what the show actually aired, I felt angry and pissed off, and it was like, what the fuck? I couldn't believe how they edited it. Like, literally breaking up 2 sentences, like editing in the middle of the sentences and then combining them into one sentence so that it made it look like he endorsed a belief.
Yeah. I mean, in Ben's case, the specific copy, or the specific case that happened with Ben was, he said something to the effect of, there was an old belief in these parts of Mexico that witches are real and can kill you. And of course, guess what half of that sentence they used? Witches are real and can kill you. Here's this respected science writer, Ben Radford, saying that witches are real and can kill you. And because Ben's a friend of mine and he knew about the film, we were able to arrange with him beforehand, said, hey, Ben, in the next 6 months or so, any of these TV shows that you're going to do, let's do a sting operation. Set up a camera if you can, set up a hidden audio recorder if you can. Now, I want to stress that different states have different laws for when you're allowed to record with or without people's permission. We absolutely followed the laws every time we did this. We did a number of these sting operations. And so Ben was able to get an audio recording of here's what he actually said. And just like you described, Kenny, it was brilliant to see, here's his original recording, here's what aired, here's the parts they chopped out. Show them right side by side. It was
phenomenal. I mean, that was the part of the film, the only part of the film where, because I was downstairs, I was sitting on the couch next to my wife. She's watching like a hockey game, and I'm watching a movie, and it was the only time I paused it, took my headphones off, and I was like, holy shit, you have to hear this. You have to look at this, because this isn't just someone's story about what happened. This is hard evidence. This is actually what happened. Listen to this. And told her and showed her, and she was like, holy shit. I love that segment. I think, like, I love the entire film. I really do. But that is my favorite part because of the the actual hard evidence that you have and can show it side by side.
One of my favorite parts in the film was there's the very short shot at the end where Riko Muranaka, the Japanese doctor,
Oh, yes.
Who was defending the HPV vaccine, which is now basically unused entirely in Japan because of the anti-vaccine movement. The leader of the anti-vaccine movement is this former doctor named Andrew Wakefield. And a few years ago, he made a movie called Vaxxed, which was an all-out anti-vaccine movie. And in his movie Vaxxed, he showed a protest of Japanese people holding signs that said, kind of half in Japanese and half in English, you see the word no, and you see like syringes and stuff. And he was saying, here's an anti-vaccine protest in Japan. Japanese people do not want these poisonous vaccines. Well, our expert in our film, Riko Muranaka, is actually Japanese and speaks and reads Japanese. And she tells us that's the opposite of what those signs say. This was a pro-vaccine rally in the street. We need the vaccine. No to HPV. No to what's the type of cancer? Slap, slap, slap. The type of cancer that the HPV vaccine prevents. Okay. They're saying no to cancer, yes to the vaccine.
Wow.
Just that little moment. I mean, that is so damning for someone like Andrew Wakefield to go out and do that kind of thing.
Wow. Mike wants to know, just curious, Brian, have you ever done a show about Ken Ham's Creation Museum?
So a very interesting question. So again, going back, that we're an educational nonprofit. Our stuff is used in schools. That means two things that we will never go anywhere near are politics and religion. You'll never hear us endorse a political perspective or say yay or nay to any particular religious beliefs. With that said, science claims, regardless of who makes them, are very fair game. And we've done quite a few shows over the years attacking is not the right word. Unpacking various anti-scientific claims that are made by, in many cases, creationists. The Mormons have a whole set of claims about the archaeological history of the Americas that are provably false. Anytime you've got claims like that are specific science claims, we can and will happily show what was wrong with them. And more importantly, because we're thinking of the students and we're not trying to tell the students, don't go to church anymore. We're trying to tell the students, here's how we know what we know. And here's a tool you can use to critically examine stuff in the future. So I do avoid religious beliefs. I'm non-religious myself. However, I do understand that that's not what our charter is to do as an educational nonprofit. So I stick to the rules, and I think we're giving the kids pretty good tools.
Good. Before I go on to the next
cervical
book,
cancer. Thank you, Brandy.
Cervical, yes. I
blame Kenny.
Whatever. I did notice that I'm kind of fixated on the number of Rubik's cubes you have behind you on the shelf.
So these are the ones that I don't use. All the good ones are downstairs, down in the TV area. I'm one of these people, I can't do one thing at a time. If I'm watching a movie, I have to be doing a Rubik's Cube.
Wow.
So this is like an older 3x3.
So are you good at solving them?
Huh?
Can you solve it?
Sure. This is a 7x7. I have a 9x9 downstairs. It's one of my favorite. It's not difficult. You know, a lot of times I'm doing this, someone say, oh, you must be good at math. No, math has nothing to do with it. It's just simply a puzzle. Once you understand how to do it, it's just an iterative process. And for me, it's just relaxing. It's like sitting there, fidgeting with clay or fidgeting with something. There's not a lot of thinking involved. You're just following these little algorithms and these steps and everything. But to me, they're just a way to chill. And what's funny is the 2x2. People always look at the 2x2 and they say, oh, that's the one I could do. That's the easy one. I can do that one. This one is actually substantially harder than the 3x3. Because when you're solving the 3x3 cube, you've got more places that you can store a block so that it won't get taken out of order. Then you can put it back. With the 2x2, every turn you make screws up what you did before.
Wow.
So in that sense, it's actually quite a bit harder. So I always laugh when people say, "Oh, I can solve that one. Give me that one." Nope, doesn't happen.
JD says, where can someone get an autographed Blu-ray copy of Science Friction?
So, like I said, in case you missed it, it's not out yet, and it's not going to be up to us to give out Blu-ray copies. That's going to be up to whoever the distributor ends up being after we get a deal for it. So that's just part of the downside of doing a commercial project is we can't just give it away to all of our donors as much as we would love to. Actually, everyone who donated for the film is going to get a copy of it. So that's. Yes. Are you in there? I'm sure you are. There.
I'm in the credits, bitch. Awesome. Totally in there. I'm waiting because this sounds like something really cool, and one of the projects that I have going on right now is a mystery museum, and I have space for it, and it's basically the hook is the mystery to get people in, and then I'm gonna slam them with some critical thinking and knowledge and teach them how I solved the mystery, and maybe the steps go into the steps of like how I solved it. So it kind of I'm basing it on education, and this is something that I want to showcase because we have an area where we can do lectures, we can do movies, we can have like a movie night, or we can do like a presentation or a screening. And this is something I'm hopefully in the future when it's all done and it's out, I want to be able to screen it and have people come out and watch it, because I think it's really important for people to understand that when you watch a lot of these shows, especially fringe type shows that come on that really promote, they have the agenda, if you will, of promoting like some kind of belief, and they have the token scientist or token skeptic on. I want you to see that there's a good chance that that person coming on is edited for context, for
yeah.
They might be saying something that's not actually what they said. So let's focus on that. So this is something I don't know if we're allowed. I don't know how the legalities or whatever is, but I'm going to screen it anyway. I'm just not going to tell you.
Be able to get away with it. I mean, I'll assure you of that. No, I mean, what the legalities are, it's not really a legality question right now. Is right now it's basically on the market, so we're trying to get a distribution deal.
Right.
Key to that process is film festivals. Film festivals are where many films like this are bought. This is 2020, though. Everything is wrong and screwed up this year. So that whole process is in turmoil. Nobody knows what's going on.
Right.
But typically, film festivals will only give a film a screening if they can be the premiere, if they can say they're the official premiere of the film. So that's why we can't give anything that could be described as a public screening. We can have private screenings with invited guests, and we're doing that all the time. Brandy, who's just on here a moment ago somewhere, hi, Brandy, if you're still there. She just did this the other day. We did this with her Las Vegas Skeptics of the South. What was it called?
The Las Vegas Skeptics Association, I think.
Something. I am so sorry, Brandy. Anyway, we had all the people there. They're allowed to see it because it's a private screening. It's not open to the public. You can't come and buy tickets. And the same goes that if you're going to try and sell it to it's unlikely at this point that it's going to be a theatrical release, but it would more likely go to somewhere like HBO or Showtime. They need to be the premiere. They're not going to be second banana. They're not going to buy a film that's already premiered somebody else.
Right. They like my T-shirt. That's right. I like it.
On that.
So I guess we have to wait until the quarantine and the all the shit is kind of blown over. Maybe I guess we're talking like easily 2021 now, right?
Honestly, I have no idea. This is relatively new to me. Our director, Emery, he's done this many times before, but for me, this is new territory for me. And the fact that it's stupid 2020 where everything's weird, I have no crystal ball. But obviously I want to get it into the hands of everyone who wants to see it, and I will do whatever I can to make that happen.
I mean, if you, I would recommend it. I've gotten to watch it. I'm gonna totally rub it in. I have seen the film. It's fucking awesome. I mean, it's really good. It really shows you how much possible bullshit goes on behind the scenes, and I really like it. The people are sincere, and you see the passion in their presentations when you interview people, and it's funny because I don't think you're in it at all, are you? Maybe you
hear my voice once.
Yeah.
Actually, that ended up because we ended up being so far below budget. Las Vegas Society of Skeptics. Thank you, Brandy. Because we were so far below on budget, we had to change some of our creative choices. Initially, it was going to be about me going around and talking to these scientists and having them tell me one-on-one about their experience, as if kind of you as the audience are sort of learning about this through me as sort of the leader. And I think that was the wrong creative choice anyway. So the fact that we had to cut down on the number of people that we were able to put on airplanes and send them to shooting locations, and we had to pay fewer people, it did end up being as it is now, which is just interviews, and you don't even see the interviewer. In many of these interviews, we hired a local camera crew who would go there, set up the equipment, and set up an iPad. And then usually Emery, the director, and myself would be there on the iPads on FaceTime, talking to the people, conducting the interview over FaceTime or something.
Wow.
That's brilliant. And it's wonderful that it works that way. One time I was actually doing that from a car in LA traffic. Brian Mallow, the science comedian, you may have remembered him in the film. That was his interview. I was driving for that one.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing that the technology we have today allows for that. You don't even have to be there.
Yeah.
You can remotely direct.
It has its pros and cons because some of the camera guys that we hired didn't do very good jobs. And when you're shooting everything in 4K, if the color is off, or if the lighting is off, or if the focus is off, you can't tell that over Skype. Right. Or if they did a really crappy job miking the person. And that happened to us quite a few times. So we had some junk footage. We had to do a lot of repairs in post. Fix it in post is kind of an old joke that's not funny, and was especially not funny this year.
So what do you got coming up in the future? We're winding down. We got about 22 minutes left, but we're good. What's the next project?
So Science Friction is winding down. We're still doing some online distribution of Principles of Curiosity, the 2017 film. That should be on Amazon Prime.
Ooh.
Maybe in a month. I'm obviously going to promote the hell out of that when it is. I already mentioned we're doing a little bit on developing the series for public broadcasting. Public broadcasting is fascinating. This is also something that was new to me, was how different public television is from commercial television. The way that it works in PBS is one particular station. I think most of us have seen WGBH Boston. They produce more of these shows than any other station, but many PBS stations produce shows. They don't actually go out and do the shooting and everything. That's done by independent production companies. In this case, that would be us. And we make a film. We are responsible for finding our own grants to finance our production. The presenting station is the one that it says, they've looked at our pilot and says, yeah, that's good enough. We're willing to put our name behind that. They put their people on the telephone and sell it to other PBS stations in the nation. They will pay that presenting station a small amount for the right to sell this. Public broadcasting, there's not big dollar amounts in any of this. Nobody gets rich in public television.
Right.
And so eventually the presenting station will make back the money that it costs them to hire the telephone people, and they get to win whatever daytime Emmy award the show might win. And then we're back here with working on our grants, trying to get the next series funded. So It's something you do because you believe it's important. It's not something that you do
Right.
because you think it's a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right.
So we're going to be doing that. And I say we're going to be doing that. We are pitching a station on the concept, and only if we get to the point where they say, yeah, we like this concept good enough, we would be willing to air it if you produce a really damn good pilot. If we get to that stage, then we're going to produce a pilot. And we've got other stations we can go to if this one doesn't like it. Besides that, we're doing our first fandom convention, which is going to be in October, which is not even announced yet, even though it's already August, which is like crazy and terrifying. It's a new con. It's going to be called the Outpost. So this is Outpost 2020. The Outpost, think of a space station where entertainment, fandom, cosplay, gaming, science fiction, authors, all of that fun stuff, they all come to meet in the Cantina bar with science. The way that we describe this, this is exactly the kind of thing our donors have always wanted us to do. The donors have always wanted us to reach out to a younger, more diverse audience, exactly the audience I just described for you. And so our content, our type of critical thinking and science content is going to be, we think of it as the secret payload hidden inside the rest of this content going out to all of these con attendees. So, this is a first con for us. It's going to be relatively small, maybe 1,000 people max. We would be delighted with. If we get a couple hundred people registered, we'll be thrilled. And we hope to take it into the real world and make it a real conference in future years. But we're not letting any grass grow under our feet. We're trying to stay busy here.
That sounds awesome. That's something I'm totally into, because everything you mentioned, I'm into. So
dude, you're going to love this show then. You're going to love this.
I'm like excited. Like, yeah, let's get this done. Oh, if you need any help, let me know. Because
we do. You're hired.
Hell yeah. Yes. I would love to help out if I can be part of that, because that sounds amazing. I mean, I love cosplay. I love science fiction. I love science. I love it all. So
you see, I never would have guessed that from looking around your office.
Really? You don't even see the half of it. You don't.
I know. I've seen the wide angle.
We're gonna go around. Look at this. This is just Superman and Star Wars there, and then you have the library going on with on the ceiling. I have ships, and then yeah, there's a few things over there too. So yeah, this is my total sci-fi man cave.
Kenny, you're either not well or you're incredibly well, one or the other.
I think I straddle the fence, right in between, but it's all good. It's all good.
It is.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. That's so cool. So this one is going to be virtual, right?
Yes, obviously,
okay.
for 2020 reasons.
Obviously.
So, we spent much of the last week or two getting these online sales demos from all the companies that present virtual fairs, virtual conferences, and everything. There's some very good options. A lot of that stuff is obscenely overpriced, but there's a lot of new services that have both excellent bandwidth quality, support huge numbers of people, have good feature sets, and are going to be affordable for us. So right now, I'll tell you a couple things about it.
Oh,
we're also going to be presenting an award series at the conference. This is our first award series.
Okay.
Since the Outpost is the theme, that's, it's a virtual outpost, a space station somewhere in deep space. I have some terrible news, is that the previous Outpost was destroyed by an asteroid strike. So the awards are actually called the asteroids. And the actual physical awards that the recipients are going to receive are going to be these shards of burned and scarred metal from the previous space station, and are going to be guaranteed to be the most awesome thing on everyone's award shelf.
How can you win one? I want to know. What do I have to do, because I want one?
Whoa, that was pretty alarming.
That's what happens when you put a bug up top.
Can one of your paranormal listeners please explain that for us?
I'm sure they could. So what categories, just for conversation's sake, what categories are we talking about? Like
so I mean, it's the usual I'm not the one doing this, so I'm speaking kind of with some secondhand expertise, but there'll be, I believe there's going to be for a new author. It's all new stuff. It's like who's doing the newest, greatest stuff. Comic books, YouTube series, podcast. I think there's going to be 5 of them. So kind of all in that genre. And what we're looking for is people who are doing not only really great work, but who are also, we feel, improving the population.
Okay.
By virtue of their great work.
We're getting some good comments. It's a ghost. Whatever.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mike. I was kind of concerned.
Yeah, me too. Although I did move all of my haunted and cursed objects over to the museum thing, so there's nothing that should be haunted here. I shouldn't have any ghosts.
Now, you and I spoke about your museum a couple of months ago, and there was a couple of items that I was potentially going to give you on loan or on display. One of them was, I actually wouldn't get it because it belonged to my son. I think I lied to you and told you it was mine, but it was actually my son's. A Coso artifact. Some of your listeners or viewers right now may be familiar with the Coso artifact. Coso is a mountain range outside of Death Valley in California. The Coso artifact is an old, I believe, 1920s spark plug encased inside solid rock.
Yes.
And you go, whoa, how is that possible? That's not possible. And it's been used by young Earth creationists to show, you see, rocks form really quickly. The Earth, there's no reason that Earth needs to be older than 6,000 years. Now, of course, that's not true. And the simple explanation is that things left in the desert can acquire accretions very quickly. They can corrode. And when you have rust corroding, it sucks in whatever sediment is packed around it, and it turns it into essentially a rock. And that happens quite quickly. So my son actually found one of these. It was a spark plug also, and it was almost entirely encased in rock. So We've got our own little Coso artifact. But he was unwilling to surrender that. So I apologize for offering that to you. And the other thing...
What would it take to convince him otherwise? Uh-oh. He's getting it. We're actually going to see a preview. Oh. Is that one of the sliding stones?
All I can say is it would be illegal to remove a rock from a national park.
Ooh.
I will say this. The sliding stones, the mysterious sailing stones in Death Valley, they are made of dacite from a geological formation called the Tin Mountain Formation, Tin, T-I-N. And so this is a piece of Tin Mountain dacite. That is all I am willing to say about it. You know that I've been there many, many times, including filming the... There's a lot of the film Principles of Curiosity, by the way, talks about and shows footage of the sliding stones, the rocks that move mysteriously all by themselves across the desert floor in Death Valley. I was very fortunate in the year 2001 to be there with a video camera when I didn't even know about the phenomenon, but I was able to film it happening. And we show that film in Principles of Curiosity.
Yes. Yes, you do. Very cool. That's very cool. Yes. So, yeah, if you're ever in the Philadelphia area, you let me know. And I will take you not only on the tour around Philly to see all the places, because you got to see the Rocky statue. You can't come to Philly without seeing the Rocky statue. And a cheesesteak.
In fact, before the pandemic hit. The pandemic hit. You and I had actually talked about, I really want to come on one of your ghost investigations when you're going out with some people.
Yeah.
So that's still very much, once we're able to travel again safely, obviously, I still very much want to do that. So I don't know if any of your listeners are typically among your ghost hunting friends who you might go out with, but I would love to join all of you guys if that's a possibility.
There are several places that I am very friendly with that all I have to do is call, and it would open up to us, and then I could actually invite a select few people. We could actually make it an event and just have a few select people that come out, and we can partake in a ghost hunt.
We should totally do that.
Okay.
We did that. How much time do we have?
We have as much time as we want because
Okay.
I don't have to stop at 11 o'clock.
Okay. So in 2008, is it really that long ago? Wow, that's really depressing.
Yeah, that's a long time ago. You're old.
We made a TV pilot. We made a 1-hour TV pilot for a show called The Skeptologists, in which we took about a half dozen of the most eminent, best-known science communicators, science celebrities, to whatever degree we were able to get, from diverse disciplines. We had a medical doctor, we had a magician, which was very important to have. We had a psychologist, we had a historian, we kind of the whole range.
Right.
And the idea behind the show was kind of like Batman. They would get the bat signal, they would jump into the Batmobile, and they would rush off to the scene of the pseudoscience to debunk it. So it was called The Skeptologists, and we shot 2 segments for our pilot. And one of the segments we shot on board the Queen Mary, the old cruise ship in Long Beach, California. And they have a ghost tour on the ship, as you probably know, where you go through the engine room and you go through some of the boiler rooms that no longer have the boilers in them. And they take you to some famous locations. You say, oh, the ghost of this person is usually reported in this room, and this ghost happens here. So it's kind of a whole prescribed thing. And you go to the swimming pool area, and there's, the little girl wearing the dress or whatever that's in the swimming pool. And so we got our producers, this was tough. Our producers had to find a local ghost hunting team who would let us follow them as they did their ghost hunt through the Queen Mary. And what happened, and this is probably a phenomenon you've experienced yourself, is that sort of a telephone email chain quickly appeared in which all of the ghost hunters all got a hold of each other and said, do not talk to these people. These are a bunch of debunkers, and they're here to make you look like idiots. Well, of course, that wasn't true. We were not going to promote the ghost. We were hoping to see them make a conclusion, and we wanted our experts to determine what they were actually detecting or whatever it was. We had someone from NASA there with a FLIR camera that cost $50,000 at the time. I've got this stupid little, I've got the little FLIR 1 here camera, right, which you can get on Amazon for $200-300, but you can't zoom in with it. It's low resolution. Back in 2008, we had a 4K camera with a huge zoom lens on it. So you could zoom in on something that was a quarter of a mile away and see total detail on a person's face or something. It was an amazing camera. And so we had this, we had, all the other little tools and gadgets. And we went through the tour with the ghost hunters with all of our cameras going and hoping for them to find something. And they were late. They didn't find anything. Now, this is a problem that all the TV shows face. If you're with the Discovery Channel and you're making a documentary about whatever it is, you have to know in advance that you're going to go there and there's not going to be anything for you to point your cameras at. There is not going to be an alien standing up and saying, hi, I'm an alien. A ghost is not going to step out and say, here, I'll stand here while you get set up and take some footage of me. There is not going to be anything to point your camera at. And the shows all have to know that, and that's why they do so much, oh, what was that? What was that? Oh, what's just around the next corner? They have to invent the drama because there's no actual drama. Well, this was our first time, and we didn't know that. So we didn't have anything prepared. And it was really boring. And we're just starting to go, oh, man, this show is going to really suck. So I won't say his name, Ryan Johnson, who is the director of the pilot. There was this one little place outside one of the engine rooms that was like a little shack. It was like a little shed that had its own roof inside a much bigger room. And he took a quarter at some point. I'm looking around for a quarter to show as a prop in case you don't know what a quarter is for some reason. And he takes this quarter and he throws it so that it lands on the roof of this little shed. And by some miracle, it then found a hole in the roof of the shed, which it then fell through and landed at the ghost hunter's feet. So from the ghost hunter's perspective, this was about the freakiest possible thing that could have happened. And they like, oh my God, whoa, they all back up. They make a circle around the corner and they're filming it with all of their gear and everything. And they finally pick it up and they're careful with it. And oh, yeah. And it also happened to be a really old quarter. It was like 1940 or something. It was surprisingly old. So they were just blown away. And it just got crazy. It was pretty good television. But then afterwards, as we're like editing this, we decided, wait a minute, we can't show this. We faked this. We can't make it look like these people. So we just on plain ethical standards, we had to completely omit that from the series. We did put it on YouTube or something like that, or put it out there for fun, but we couldn't show something that we ourselves faked in the show. And what that segment ended up being was, mostly a lesson for us in how can you teach these lessons. How can you teach people watching TV shows like this to second guess and take a critical attitude towards these shows? Because we hadn't really thought that through when we made our pilot. We just thought that we were going to film the ghost hunters making idiots out of ourselves, and our scientists were going to say, oh, this is what happened. And that didn't pan out at all. And it was a terrible idea. That's what I was talking about an hour and a half ago. That's an inherently negative idea. So rightfully, that show didn't go anywhere, but we learned a lot of lessons.
Yeah, it's very difficult because, I do go on a lot of ghost hunts, and it's very difficult to just sit there and observe. And that's why I go. I observe. I usually have sheets of paper where I have graphs and checklists, and I check off what ghost hunters do, don't do. I make notes about the equipment they use, how they use it, if they understand what it's done, what it's doing. I just basically quietly collect data over, many weeks and months to see what they're doing. And it's very hard not to speak up. My general rule is I don't say anything to anyone unless I'm asked. If somebody asks me a direct question, then yes, I'll explain what I'm doing or I'll answer the question. But otherwise, I stay in the corner and I don't say anything, which is difficult to do because most of the people that run these events, I do know. Yeah. So once they see me, usually about half the time when I do sign up for an event, I immediately get an email. What are you doing? Why are you coming to my event? What's going on? I'm just there to observe. That's it. And then, usually when I do show up, they have questions or stuff they want me to answer, but I'm just trying to collect data. I don't want to embarrass anybody. Well, that's not true. Sometimes I do. If they're being like very arrogant or I know everything and they're promoting ghost hunting tools as like scientific, then yeah, of course I'll, say something, but
we had before we shot the pilot with these ghost hunters, we went on the regular commercial ghost tour. And we bought tickets and paid for it and went in just like anyone else would. And Ryan, the director, he brings some professional video camera, which was so suspicious looking. He's got the whole big thing. This is 2008, so cameras were still enormous back then. And we go on the ghost tour, and at one point they took us to a little room and they laid out all the ghost hunting tools on a table. And they said, "Here, you guys use I'll grab these and now go investigate." The guy couldn't have been more checked out. But we took the tools and I grabbed this little box. It was like a little EMF detector, and it had a couple of blinking lights on it. I don't remember it too well, and a button that you push to, if you're testing an electrical circuit or something like that, the lights would flash if the circuit's live. That's what it was actually for. And they had this sitting there. And I discovered that if my thumb was on the button like this, pushing the button, holding it closed, that the switch was actually kind of bad. And if I moved my thumb imperceptibly, you couldn't see me move it, that light would flicker.
Yes.
And I was sitting here looking at that, kind of discovering that for myself, realizing this. And there was some real ghost hunters who were on that tour. I shouldn't say real ghost hunters. There were some ghost believers who were on that tour, and they saw this thing blinking in my hand, which was just me trying to figure out this button. And they came and they gathered around me, and there was 3 or 4 of them. And they said, "Whoa, what's going on? What's that? Right there. Look, hey, everyone, shh, look at this." And his light's little blinking. And Ryan is filming this now. He's standing aside. So I go, not sure what I should do, but okay, I'm just going to go with it and see what happens. So, I make it blink a few more times, but if you looked at my hand, none of my fingers were moving. I wasn't doing anything. It was the switch just happened to be that sensitive. And this particular room that we were in had a known ghost associated with it. It might have been JD is saying goodbye. Thank you for coming, JD.
Thank you, JD.
It might have been Captain Smith. I don't know what the name was, but let's just say it was Captain Smith. And they go, "Captain Smith, are you here? Captain Smith, give us a sign." So I would make the light blink again. And they all went, "Oh." And I'm going, okay, I am being a total asshole right now. What do I do? But, he's got the camera rolling. I have no idea what we're going to use this footage. So I just kept going with it. And they formed a circle around me. And I don't know if you've ever seen this, but they all do this. They stood and they put their hands out like this, standing in a circle all around me. And they're all talking to Captain Smith and asking him to show a sign. And every time they did, I would make the light flicker like that. And it got kind of boring after like 5 minutes. And I discovered that my thumb was also getting really tired because I had to hold the button this whole time. And so I just finally said, I'm going to go check out the engine room. Let me just give you guys this thing. You guys can keep on going. And that's how it ended. But again, that's something else that I look back on that and say, okay, what the hell was that about? I mean, that's not accomplishing anything. It's not teaching anyone anything. I mean, I guess you can show that this is a way that people can be fooled. But in this case, people are being fooled by someone who is deliberately trying to fool them.
Right.
And that's not the case in the real world. When people do get fooled by something that happens to them in a house they believe is haunted, they are genuinely fooled by something that is genuinely strange looking, that you or I or the average person would never think to understand, what's, who knows what the air conditioning and the spark, or who knows what's going on. We don't know, but it's something genuine and we're genuinely mistaken. And, that's what happens 99.999 times out of 100. It's never anyone lying. It's never anyone being a fraud. It's never anyone trying to be dishonest. It's honest, well-meaning people being honestly mistaken. Mm-hmm. And that's really, in my experience, that's the worst thing that ever happens in this whole conflict of, the skeptics versus the believers. It's honest people being honestly mistaken. That's not a problem. That's not the end of the world. That's, an opportunity to work together and to learn and to improve. So
that's,
I'm rambling now.
I think we should end it right on that note. That was beautiful. I was trying to think of a way. How can we end this up and wrap this up on a really positive note? And you nailed it. Good job. So, all right. Yeah. So before we head out, where can people find you, promote your shit? Go ahead.
So please come and listen to Skeptoid. Skeptoid.com. It's in every podcast app that you ever have. Just search for Skeptoid. You can't miss it. It's on the website. Leave us a positive review. Enjoy, subscribe. If you really enjoy it, then become a supporting member for $5 a month. That's what keeps the nonprofit going and what keeps things like this conference and Science Friction in production, helping to bring people an appreciation for why they should bother to learn what's real from what's not.
Awesome. Cool. So with that, thank you. Stay on with me. I'm going to close this out, but everyone else, appreciate you spending your Friday night with me and with Brian. It was a great show.
Thank you for the questions, guys. I really appreciate that. It's great.
That was, we had some good questions. We had some good conversation. I loved it. That's what the show is about. I appreciate it. I'll just wrap up with a few things. Every Saturday night, I do 3 Tortured Souls podcast with Tim Vickers and not Brian Dunning. I'm looking at your name, Brian Dunning. Tim Vickers and Dave Schumacher. I have a YouTube channel called Kenny Biddle. If you check it out, I have videos up there on deconstructing ghost hunting gadgets and this and that, exploring paranormal topics. And then I upload the podcast from here that I do every Friday night. I upload to my YouTube channel. I do a Skeptical Inquirer column called A Closer Look, where I examine, I literally take a closer look at certain topics and write about them. So I have about 40 articles up there now. Check it out. And if you have a topic you want me to look into, please feel free to send me a message, and I'll take a look. Besides that, not too much going on. I don't have any events coming up. I do have one. September 19th is Selma Mansion in Norristown, Pennsylvania. That's a paranormal conference. If it's still on, I can't guarantee that it will be, but right now it's still on. And I will be out there. I'll have my Skeptical Help booth set up, which looks like the Skeptical Help booth frame that I have around here. It's actually a physical one. It's really cool. It's cool to set up.
I just realized I match your frame. You're welcome.
There you go. You are right. You color coordinated. Good job. But besides that, that's it. You can find me here every Friday night, pretty much every Friday night, unless I take off, at 9 o'clock on I Am Kenny Biddle, the WLFE-DB radio network. And then I'm also broadcasting to my YouTube channel now. So because the software that I use upgraded, let me stream to 3 places instead of 2. So with that, I'm going to play my intro. Brian, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and answer questions from everyone coming in. It was a pleasure.
Not at all. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right. So I am going to play my outro video here, and then we can chat for a couple minutes. So until next time, everybody, never stop learning.